So our first speaker is Richard MacKinnon. Richard MacKinnon is the founding director of the Centre for Cape Breton Studies located here on campus. His research interests include all aspects of Atlantic Canada's culture, including oral traditions, music, language, material culture, and vernacular architecture. Richard has developed numerous multimedia projects and published many articles. He also has a book about Mary Arnold, which is currently under review.
Thanks very much, and I'm so happy to be here. This kind of talk today is, I'm going to march you through. I'll read different sections of it, but I've completed a book on this woman whose name was Mary Arnold and her colleague named Mabel Reid, who had a short but really influential stay in Cape Breton Island. They were here in 1938 with the founding of Tompkinsville, and many of you who are involved in cooperative housing know that was one of the first housing cooperative in Canada, 1938, just 5 minutes down the road from Cape Breton University in Reserve Mines. And so I wrote a paper in a scholarly journal on the history of Tompkinsville, and at the time I had a chance to interview Mary Laban, who was one of the founding families in Tompkinsville, and did a number of oral history interviews with her. But I also traveled around to archives, but I kept stumbling into this woman, Mary Arnold, and she was kind of a footnote in that first paper I wrote. And so that footnote has become a book, which is now, it's at a publishing company now, and they're trying to decide whether to publish it or not, and so I'm hoping that you'll see that soon. But anyway, I'll start. Without further ado, I found a little excerpt that I was looking for 15 years ago at the archive in Ottawa, and I could not find it. There was a film done in 1938 when Tompkinsville was built, all about cooperatives in Nova Scotia. I couldn't find it at the National Archive about 10 years ago. I was out browsing a couple of weeks ago, and there's a big initiative at Memorial University and St. FX, a digital archive project. And lo and behold, I found the video on the digital archive project at Memorial University. So I just took a little excerpt from Tompkinsville to show you this. There's no sound, it's just video. There, I can sit down. You can see what cooperative housing is all about there by that video clip. But at any rate, so Mary Arnold was there in the picture, and you can see how that works. And I'm sure many of you in the room know that whole process: study clubs, kind of, and again working together to kind of in groups of 11 or 12 to kind of form a neighborhood and so this would have been 1938. And this was the result here, the Tompkinsville neighborhood in 1938. So I'm just going to read a letter that this Mary Arnold wrote to Father Jimmy in 1941. She writes, "It's hard to put in words how often Mabel and I think of Nova Scotia and all our stay meant there to us, especially the course we took at the University of Reserve Mines," unquote. So Mary and Mabel clearly learned much from Father Jimmy Tompkins and Moses Cody, and they saw their year in Cape Breton as a university course in the cooperative movement. So arriving in Reserve Mines in 1938, Mary Arnold and her friend Mabel Reid. Mabel was always kind of in the background. I've got all kinds of information about Mary, and actually the Tompkinsville Co-op was called the Arnold Housing Group after Mary. And in Glace Bay, there's actually a housing group named after Mabel. It's called Reedville in Glace Bay. So at any rate, so they've left a lasting mark on the landscape of Cape Breton, also on the history of Cape Breton. They helped directly in the construction of 3 cooperative housing groups: Tompkinsville and Reserve Mines, named the Arnold Housing Group; Reedville in Glace Bay, and Villanova in Dominion, named the Steele Housing Group after Father Harvey Steele, who was a Scarborough foreign missionary and wrote a couple of interesting books. One called Why Kill a Priest, about the death of my uncle, Art MacKinnon, who was a Scarborough missionary in Dominican Republic in 1965. So they followed the cooperative philosophy of Father Jimmy and Moses Cody in aiding miners and their families to construct suitable homes. By late 1938, spokesmen for the Antigonish movement claimed direct involvement by approximately 50,000 in activities including 42 cooperative stores, 17 cooperative lobster canneries, 10 fish processing plants, 140 credit unions, 2,390 study clubs, 1,500 in Nova Scotia, 500 in New Brunswick, and 390 in PEI. So amazing statistics. But how did they spread their philosophy? The philosophy of Cody Tompkins, and particularly with housing cooperatives, was done in pamphlets. At the time, publishing pamphlets was cheap, so you got that out to, if there was a neighborhood willing to form a housing group, they would use that as a template. So there's many of these out there, and they're still in the archive. You can find them. This one was done by Alex Laidlaw, who also did a lot of writing on cooperative housing. What can the women do? Again, women played a significant role in all this too. They put gyprock up on the walls, as well as did things like planting. So an interesting thing with Tompkinsville, we look at housing today, and people kind of jam houses into small lots. The housing lots at Tompkinsville were 2 acres each. So just think about that. That's a big lot. So besides the building, the whole philosophy was you would plant gardens, you would do other things, you would can some of your own. So again, there was a whole kind of a holistic kind of thing rather than just building homes. And of course, Mary Arnold authored the book, The Story of Tompkinsville, shortly after she was here in Cape Breton. But at any rate, again, that's just showing you the 3 in 1938, 39, and 40, some of the housing co-ops in Cape Breton that were. So again, who is this Mary Arnold, and where did she come from, and why did she come here, and what kind of other things did she do? She was born in 1876 in Staten Island, New York. Her father died when she was 6 years old. Her mother moved to New Jersey. It's here where she met the Arnolds and met the Reeds. And Mary and Mabel went on to become lifelong friends in their adventures throughout North America. Mary describes meeting her lifelong friend, Mabel. My first meeting with Mabel was at the age of 6 when our 2 mothers had stopped to talk for a moment on the main street of Somerville. If I remember correctly, I do not think that either of us was favorably impressed with the other, unquote. But I was really helped in doing this project because Mary was an inveterate writer. She wrote letters to everyone. She continued corresponding with the Tompkinsville residents as long after the Tompkinsville Housing Group was developed. She corresponded regularly with Jimmy Tompkins, Moses Cody. So I was able to track down a lot of her own her own correspondence. And actually, much of that wasn't in Cape Breton, by the way. Much of the real rich material I found on her was in 2 archives in the United States, in Swarthmore College in Philadelphia and Harvard University, the Radcliffe College, the women's university. So both those archives had, in fact, all the housing plans for Tompkinsville are not at CBU, they're at Swarthmore College in Philadelphia. So anyway, I should get them and get them moved up here. Okay, what else? Okay, again, just showing you the kind of process. I don't think I have to kind of preach to the converted here. The whole process was, study club. You would work and again, solve your own problems by understanding the issues. As well, ancillary things were important. Before you even had a housing cooperative, you had to have a credit union. And again, Father Jimmy's model was a library was significant. You had to have a library where you could access material. Now we have the internet. But at the time, libraries were considered the most important. So you'd bring in books by Warbossi on cooperativism, any of the famous cooperative philosophical books that were out there, you'd bring them in and have people read them and discuss them in a forum. So the whole idea was more of a kind of a compromise and discussion rather than sit around the table and make a vote on something. So again, this is showing kind of a study club at work.